You know, niggas gotta get their priorities together. Got their mind on the wrong things, spending their money in the wrong way.
Trapaholic, real trap shit.
Say you need that car with the rims and a trunk, just like Jim. It's more than life. Yeah.
I'm telling you. Talk to him.
Say you need that LV bag with the belt and the hat.
That's all you got though.
It's more than life. Yeah.
Talk to him. Real.
Say you wanna turn up at the club, buy some bottles, and press them guns. It's more than life.
Fucking everybody.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Saints and Appetizers podcast. And who dat? And on this evening's episode of the show, we have some main course for you. We're gonna go over some of the things that happened before the Vikings game and some of the stuff that happened during the Vikings game and some of the stuff after the Vikings game. But let's just talk real quick about just the Vikings game in general. It did not go as planned as I thought at all. It got out of hand very early in the first half. Just like always, it seems like the last four games, the Saints defense has allowed, like, and this is just in one game where they only allowed 14 points, but they've allowed 14 points or more. And like in their last four games, but in three of the last four, they've allowed 17 or more. But in this game, they allowed 24 points in the first half. I mean, that's just not sustainable. And I thought the Saints maybe had turned the corner a little bit with the victories over the Colts and the Bears. You know, maybe thought this could be a statement game for them, and downplaying the impact that Joshua Dobbs had been having for the Vikings. Like, I was just saying that it was a nice story, but didn't think it was sustainable. But he came in and he burned the Saints. Really, it was just all in the first half, really. But then the Saints defense, just like they have in the last four games, they showed up and pretty much shut him out in the second half while only allowing 3 points. But he did a lot, they did enough to win just in the first half. But let's get into some other news and notes, and we'll end up back around to that. So can I get a menu? And so the only real like news or headline that happened like just days before this game against the Minnesota Vikings was that Michael Thomas got arrested for throwing bricks at this man's truck. I guess this man was a contractor or a construction worker that was parking his truck like right in front of Michael Thomas's driveway, and Michael Thomas told him to move. You know, I guess asked him to move. He wouldn't move, and then next thing you know, Michael Thomas has thrown two bricks at this guy's truck. Like, I think one was just on the side of the door, and then the other one was actually on the window, cracked the windshield. And so now that's three wide receivers, two wide receivers in the last 3 weeks to be arrested by the Keener County Police Department. I mean, you can't make this kind of stuff up. But honestly, I wasn't concerned about Michael Thomas like getting suspended or missing any games due to this. Like, I was pretty positive that he was going to play, you know, just because nothing suspensions being handed down by the NFL, such a long process that it's not like he was going to miss this game. So I wasn't surprised that he was going to play. What surprised me more than anything is I thought he was going to have like a Michael Thomas arrest game or a Michael Thomas brick game gang, you know, but he didn't have a big game. It looked like he was the start of the game, you know. It looked like Derek Carr was like targeting him, you know, was wanting to get him the ball. He threw it to him, I think about 3 times. I think he was targeted like 3 times. The first catch throw that was thrown to him, he wasn't able to secure, but then the next one, I think it was the one where it was a quick screen where he slid in to catch the pass, and I guess the defender's helmet went off of his knee, and never got to. So it definitely didn't become uh, an arrest game, like a big game for Michael Thomas. It was quite the opposite, you know. And Michael Thomas, he's been pretty good just recently, you know, the first what 10 9 games or so he's been healthy, and now he's hurt again, which that's really disappointing, you know. There was flashes and moments of him looking like he's getting back to his old self, but I just don't at this point in his career, you know, 30 31-year-old wide receiver, I don't see him ever getting back to what he was in 2019. Just the injuries are too prevalent for him. But so yeah, the Saints weren't able to do like hardly anything in the first half. So you have Michael Thomas going out of the game, so that doesn't help at all. But the Saints just couldn't get anything going on offense. You know, it really just felt like they hardly had the ball at all while Derek Carr was the quarterback. And their defense was giving up like these 10, 15 play scoring drives to Minnesota. So it just felt like uh, I understand that the Saints offense wasn't helping at all by getting three and outs and not being able to get in rhythm on their own, you know, because they had possessions, they just couldn't do anything with it and could never seem to get in any rhythm. And it's kind of surprising. You look back here at Derek Carr's numbers; it felt like he didn't throw for like any yards at all in this game, but he had 13 uh, completions on 18 attempts for 110 yards. So he was efficient, even though he was under pressure and getting sacked. And early on in the game, they were before they went down by like 2, 3 scores. It looked like they were able to run the ball for the first time. You saw Alvin Kamara ripping off 5, 8, 10 yard gains, you know, but they got down so early that they just had to abandon that. And like all of the yards that Alvin Kamara all came like in the first half. Like he had 9 carries for 42 yards off of 4.7 yards a carry. You know, they definitely should have just continued to feed the running game with Alvin Kamara and Taysom Hill, and Jamal Williams is healthy. There was no Kendra Miller, but they just didn't do that. And going against the Vikings, you know, Joshua Dobbs, he's about as efficient as you could be in this game as being a second start. It wasn't even he didn't even start the last week. He just came in the first quarter, but his first start as a Minnesota Viking, he was doing all the Houdini moves, getting breaking tackles, getting out of sacks, uh, rolling out to the left, rolling out to the right, and completing passes on the run. It was the most frustrating thing watching Joshua Dobbs against the Saints defense in the first quarter. You know, it looks like the Saints got him stopped on third down, or it looks like even on second down, they may get a big sack on him. Next thing you know, he's rolling out and picking up yards on the ground, completing another pass to TJ Hawkinson, who wasn't even 100% in the game. But yeah, he had pretty definitely respectable numbers. Joshua Dobbs did. He was 23 and for 34 for 268 yards and a touchdown. But he also was did some work on the ground as well. He had 8 carries for 44 yards with a 5.5 yard per carry average, and he also had like a it was a direct it was like a design quarterback run in the end zone for one of the Vikings touchdowns. And then he also the pass that he completed was for a touchdown was to TJ Hawkinson after he caught 11 passes for 134 yards, a 12.2 yard average, and a touchdown. So yeah, the Saints just were pretty much blown out of the water in the first half, and then the second half kind of rolls around, and it seems like it's going to be a lot more of the same. And then Derek Carr gets hit on a big hit by the Vikings, like gets sandwiched in between two Vikings, kind of similar to the hit that he took against the Green Bay Packers. And the Vikings had 3 sacks on the day. I think two of them were on Derek Carr and one was on Jameis Winston. But yeah, Derek Carr knocked out of the game a second time already in his tenure in New Orleans with this was uh, the same shoulder injury and a concussion now, so that knocked him out of the game. And if you watch how the Green Bay Packers game unfolded, you would have probably expected this to be the same or just as bad with Jameis Winston uh, coming in. But actually, the Saints, they got a little bit of a spark, honestly, with Jameis Winston coming in. He was able to pick up some chunk plays through the air, throwing the ball, picking up some 15, 20-yard gains, and was able to get in the end zone a couple times as well, with I think one pass was to Chris Olave, and then he had another one to A.T. Perry, who made his catching debut, had two catches for 38 yards. That's a 19 yard per catch average and a touchdown. And on Jameis Winston is it was exciting and brought some life and juice into this team. But I don't think what he does is sustainable, because that catch, the throw to A.T. Perry was a ridiculous throw. Like, he was completely like rolled out all the way to the left and then made the throw all the way to like the back corner of the right part of the end zone, and had A.T. Perry make an amazing catch, a great jump ball. Like, he mossed the defender to make that play. But so that gave the Saints a little bit of life. And what was the most impressive thing of any of that was really being able to get the two-point conversions. To be able to get two of those in a row was impressive to me more than anything. So they get back into this game with still like 11 minutes in the fourth quarter, and that's a lot of time. They had 11 minutes and maybe at least one or two timeouts still left, and you know people like the excitement and the big playability and all that from Jameis Winston, but in the end he couldn't pull it off. They got like what, two or three more possessions, still only being down by 8 points, and all Jameis Winston ended up doing, he is who he is. I am who I am, type of thing, and he threw these just horrible interceptions on two like back-to-back drives. One of them, he got like immediate pressure on him, and he just kind of threw it up for grabs. And then the last one, the one that was really the nail in the Saints coffin, the Saints were at like the Vikings own like 45-yard line, and it was either first and 10 or second and 10, and the Saints I think had like, there was like 3 minutes left or something, 3 minutes, and the Saints had like a timeout, and he just threw it up and threw it into like triple coverage, and it got picked off. And that's kind of like the game was pretty much over in the first half, but it brought enough life into some Saints fans that it just ended up crushing them all over again, because the Saints, they never had a chance in coming back in that. And even if they would have scored the third touchdown, what would have been even more of a Saintsy thing to happen is them to get within 2 points and then not get the 2-point conversion. So it could have, it was a painful loss, and it was a horrible game for the most part to watch, but it could have been more painful if the Saints would have actually scored the touchdown and then not got the 2-point conversion. But the most painful thing coming out of this game is the injuries that they piled up. They still come out of this game first in the NFC South, and and are still they're at 500. So they can still, wouldn't be too difficult to get back above 500, but they're still first in the NFC South. But the most painful thing is the injuries that they've come out with. So you got Michael Thomas dealing with a knee injury now, and then didn't mention it, but after Michael Thomas and Derek Carr all went down, Marshawn Lattimore went out with an ankle injury. I guess he rolled his ankle and has a high ankle sprain now. So from reports, it says that Derek Carr's concussion and shoulder aren't anything significant, and he should be back after the bye. So that's all positive. Whether you have decided whoever you want to be the starting quarterback now, whether you want it to be whether you want it to be Jameis Winston now or not. But at least you'll have the full array of options. But he, he he should be back. But from what I've heard, the Michael Thomas knee injury and the Marshawn Lattimore ankle injury are more severe. So they'll have 2 weeks in between a game, to heal. So hopefully they can come back and 4 or 5 weeks, maybe only miss 2 or 3 games, but that would be probably the most optimistic ruling, just from not knowing that much about these injuries. But with the injury history of Michael Thomas and not being able to do a great job of making it back from any of these ankle or foot injuries that he's had over the last, what, 3 or 4 years now, I probably less positive about Michael Thomas than I am Marshawn Lattimore. But yeah, so that's the bummer. It would have been real nice to go into the bye week with a win, being 6-4. The Falcons lose another game, so they have 6 losses now. So that would have been amazing to be able to get to the bye week with like that. But it also would have been nice to have been able to get to the bye week like completely healthy as well. But Saints were unable to do that. Very Saintsy. They've been pretty much healthy like all year for the most part, completely healthy for the most part all year. And then the game right before they bye, they lose their starting quarterback, their starting wide receiver, and their star cornerback, shutdown cornerback as well. That's just very Saintsy, if I do say myself. But since the game, which was very depressing, Saints went and signed Jason Pierre-Paul. So they signed JPP. He's kind of a older, great pass rusher. He was great for the New York Giants during their Super Bowl season, and probably his last like great season in the NFL before you could kind of start calling him washed was the Super Bowl season he had with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So the Saints are very familiar with him, but the Saints just need a spark wherever they can get it in the pass rushing category. Even though Jason Pierre-Paul, hell, he's older than Cam Jordan. He was drafted in the 2010 draft, and Cam Jordan was drafted in the 2011 draft. So it'd be interesting to see how much he's got left, if he's washed or not. But the Saints need to do anything they can to get some kind of pass rush going, because with just Carl Granderson, it's I think teams have kind of figured out that Carl Granderson is the Saints' best pass rusher. So now they're probably doubling him and doing different things to scheme away from him. So now that teams have kind of started doing that, the pass rush just hasn't been the same. So that's some of the moves that the Saints have made. Some news that happened before the game, what happened during the game, and then obviously the injuries and the signing of Jason Pierre-Paul. But now I need to go over. I almost skipped over this. I need to go over my player of the game, my Saints player of the game, hot take, and game pick score. And they aged very poorly. They aged like milk. Like, these were the worst picks I think I've made all year, all season so far. But they are comical. We'll go over it. So let's get into my player of the game. My Saints player of the game. I was commending Andres Pete as being like the Saints' best so far. When you've seen him play at the left tackle position, he's been like the Saints' most stable option at that position. And he looked pretty good against the Colts. He looked pretty good against the Bears. So I was thinking, maybe he's going to have a three-peat of good showings at the left tackle position. And well, I can't really like say that he had a bad game or He looked bad in this game against the Vikings because it's just like the whole offensive line looks bad. I think it's very obviously offensive line and offensive linemen are very in sync with their teammates and their quarterback. And if like uh, one player on the offensive line looks bad, then usually the whole offensive line looks bad. But because the offensive line just played bad, that pretty much like you're excluded from being able to be picked as player of the game, Andres Pete. So can't pick that. Can't take any credit for saying that Andres Pete was going to look great in this game because he didn't, but he didn't look horrible either. But probably your player of the game, it looked early on like it was going to be Alvin Kamara because he was ripping off a bunch of medium to close to first down gains per carry that he was having. That was something that drove me crazy early in this game is because they would rush on first down with Alvin Kamara and um, pick up like 8 yards. So then it would be 2nd and 2, and then they would throw it twice and go 3 and out, or they wouldn't get it on third down. Like that's what drove me crazy. They should have just when you're picking up 8, 7 yards a carry on first down, you should probably continue to hand it off. But yeah, it looked early on like it might be Alvin Kamara, looking like he may go for 100 yards. But I'd say it ended up being Chris Olave. Michael Thomas had a fallback week by getting arrested, just like Chris Olave did a couple weeks ago due to speeding. And Michael Thomas took a back seat, and Chris Olave took off. And looks like is Chris Olave is he back to his old self? Let's hope so. Hopefully he's over that hump. But Chris Olave, heck, he had 6 catches for 94 yards, which is 15.7 yards a catch and a touchdown. So I say it pretty easy to say that Chris Olave was your player of the game because there was really no one played that great for the Saints defense, even though Demario Davis, he's kind of racking up some sacks. I think he may be the second leader on the team with sacks because he got another one in this game. But other than that, there was no real positives for the Saints defense, not in the first half at least. So can't say I was very good with picking the player of the game, but maybe even worse with what my hot take was going to be. So the Saints had 5 takeaways in the game against the Chicago Bears the prior week to this Vikings game, and majority of that was due to Paulson Adebo. So hard to say or expect one player to duplicate a game like that, but still, I was putting it out there that the Saints defense was going to force 5 more turnovers. Again, duplicate the turnover numbers that they had against the Chicago Bears. But that's something that the Saints do well, but also isn't sustainable. They get turnovers, interceptions, and force fumbles and things like that. But what happens in a game when they don't get one or they don't get any? Well, they lose by 8 points. So it's a great stat to be in. They're either first or second in the league in turnovers and maybe first or second in interceptions. But they're a defense that kind of plays. It's kind of streaky at times, and they don't get those interceptions. Those interceptions or their fumbles, it really ends up hurting them. So I was dead wrong about them getting another 5 turnovers in this game against the Vikings. They didn't get a one. They didn't get an interception. They didn't get a fumble recovery. So I think that's a big reason. You can look at what the Saints defense did in the first half. With one of those drives that the Vikings had in the first half, the Saints could have got like an interception or recovered a fumble, and that probably would have been enough to win this game. But they weren't able to get one. So hot take was a very hot take, and it aged the milk that was sitting next to it. And then my game score, I was thinking maybe the Saints are they streaking? Are they going streaking? Are they going to win three in a row, go 3-0? But that did not happen. I thought the Saints were gonna win the game, and we're gonna look good doing it on offense and defense. So I thought the Saints were going to win, and I thought they were going to win 31-20, which is almost the opposite of what the score was, because the Vikings won 27-19. So it was kind of the score flipped around, but for the Vikings. And yeah, I'll admit, I kind of just disregarded all the feel good story and all that about Joshua Dobbs, but he ended up he showed out and has looked really impressive and looks like a quality starter, if not a backup now. So uh, Joshua Dobbs, he definitely made me eat my words, and so the Saints, they're not able to make it to the bye week. Uh, 6-4, and watch the Falcons lose a game, and even coming up this next week during their bye, the Buccaneers play the 49ers in San Francisco, so they'll lose another game. So I had said this already, that when the Saints were 5-4 and sole possession of first place and a game above 500, I thought, like, man, that might be the highest moment and mark of the season there. Well, I made sure to enjoy it, and heck, the Saints are even still first in the NFC South, so you can enjoy that still for 2 more weeks until that comes to a screeching halt, possibly in the game against Atlanta coming off the bye week, because that will kind of that could argue that may be already like a big deciding factor in who wins this division. But anyways, I think that's all I have for you. So who dat? And can I get a check, please?